Ready? Everyone, welcome virtually from home. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Kristen Sorrells-Bilodeau. I'm the Director of Community Engagement here. One of the favorite parts of my job is when I can talk with artists and bring artists together with the community to talk about issues that are important in their work that maybe we didn't consider, maybe we aren't thinking about until we see the work on the wall. The shows that Francine curates cover lots and lots of topics, and I learned so many things. I am excited that we have the opportunity to share this content with you. So thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce Cheryl Hatch, who's going to be moderating our talk tonight, and then I'm going to pass the mic to Francine, who's going to introduce our two exhibiting artists. So I am so happy that Cheryl was able to be here tonight to moderate this discussion. You all may know her as the Newport Bureau reporter for the Public's Radio here in Newport, but she has a really long and storied career in journalism that took her to the Middle East multiple times, working with women and with immigrant stories. And so in particular, she is just the perfect person to have engaged in this conversation because she's very sensitive to the stories of these women. So I really appreciate that. The Public's Radio has been an amazing supporter of the Newport Art Museum, and Cheryl Hatch has been a wonderful partner in some of these really incredible conversations. So with that, I will hand it to Francine. Cheryl, thank you for being here.
Walking into the shot. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're sitting in Arghavan Khosravi's show, which is great that we could do this in this location. And if you have time to wander down the hallway to see Unfinished Business, which is women artists from the museum's collection, you will see Minoo Emami's work as well. So both Minoo and Arghavan are collection artists, which is, yes, go us. We did that. So I'm thrilled to have them together. Their work is so important. They talk a lot about gender politics, history, culture, visual culture. These are issues not only important to their homeland of Iran or their residents in the US, but also globally. They're very important as well. I would love to introduce them to you. Minoo Emami is a multidisciplinary artist with over 25 years dedicated to art practice, teaching, and exhibition. She's a graduate of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and received her MFA from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and she has exhibited her work nationally and internationally. Arghavan Khosravi is an artist who works in painting, mixed media, and sculpture. She studied graphic design in Tehran, where she was also a children's book illustrator, and earned her MFA in painting for the Rhode Island School of Design. And she has also exhibited her work nationally and internationally. So please welcome them. And I will hand this over to Cheryl now.
Good evening. Okay in the back? Excellent. So my job is to moderate, which basically means to get out of the way. But before I do that, I was going to give you a smidge of background on me and to say what an honor it is to be up here with Arghavan and Minoo. We had a chance to talk via Zoom a couple weeks ago. We felt like the conversation that we had to prepare for this event, I just told all my friends, you must be here. It will be extraordinary. So a bit about me, in addition to what you know, I am the daughter of a soldier and a veteran. And my father left me a few times in childhood to go to war. And when he came back, he would never talk about it. And believe me, I asked a lot. I think it's no small coincidence that I became a journalist because I wanted answers. And I went to cover conflict as a very young journalist in Africa and the Middle East. And the irony of that is that when I came back, I didn't want to talk about it either. And I understand that silence and that reticence. So I want to say what I experienced informed my work and my life. The beauty, the brutality, the depravity, the kindness, it's all there in war. So I just wanted to set a gentle tone with your agreement that in this conversation with these two brilliant and gifted artists, women artists, that we tread with curiosity, but also with care and respect, and just pay attention for what things may call to remain private, right? Like the work has a voice, and I just wanted to put that out there and say once again how really fortunate we are to have them here to share their thoughts and their experiences and their work. So here come the questions. Ready, set, go. So to start, perhaps we can have you each share a little bit about your background, growing up in Iran, leaving Iran, and maybe why you had to choose to leave. And we could start Minoo and then Arghavan.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you, the host, for this beautiful event and all the glorious, beautiful paintings around us. Arghavan, Cheryl. So, a little bit about myself, brief. I was born in Iran. I lived in Iran all my life, and I never thought I will leave the country ever. But during my time in Iran, I was a self-taught artist, mostly 2D works, drawing, paintings, collage. I was teaching in my studio privately, inclusively to women, because there's a law about it in Iran, for 17 years before I moved here. At some point in my life, I thought, well, I thought, what would I feel that I have missed in my life in my last day, right? So I thought, well, I didn't go to universities because when I graduated from high school, this regime had like shut down the whole higher education system for a couple of years because they called it a cultural revolution. So we didn't have the chance at the time. And I was in my teen, I'm married to a veteran. So then life happened and everything else, and I didn't go to university. So I thought, oh, this is a good time to do that. And I applied to SMFA at Boston, and I got in. So I was divorced. My only child, a daughter, has left to Italy. So I felt, okay, this is a good time. So I moved to the United States to go to universities and then go back to my family and my life in Iran. But unfortunately, the politics and the geopolitic plans has changed Iran's situation even worse. Economy collapsed for how many times, and only in a very short time, like few months, Iran currency dropped to 1/10 of its value, including all the other things happening in the political landscape at the time. So I decided to stay. I feel I'm lucky to be here. There are many, many Iranian young and not young artists and fellows that didn't have the chance to have higher education or have a voice. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and share my work, and also have this platform sharing with other artists, brilliant artists, different generations, that we will talk more about how our works are connected, what are the differences from different generations, Iranian artists in diaspora, and what are the differences and what are the similarities. So I think that's it for now.
No, thank you, Minoo, for being here, and thank you everybody who came. Just to get a little bit of like a brief history of who I am, because it informs the paintings you see in this room. I was born shortly after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, which overthrew the ancient monarchy in Iran, which was very Western friendly. There was the hope to bring real democracy to Iran. But what happened in the aftermath was that the Islamic hardliners took over the power and silenced the other voices that were participating in the revolution. So I was born in '84 when the Islamic Republic was really trying to solidify its agenda, and there was a lot of contradictions between these modern ideas that majority of the people in the country wanted, and then these very narrow-minded religious ideas that the hardliners wanted to establish in the country. So my childhood years were formed during this time. So that's one of this tension. It's one of the core concepts that in my works you can witness. There is this coexistence with tension of a very secular world and a very religious restraining world in a way. So I spent most of my life in Iran, like Minoo. I studied graphic design in Iran. I got an MFA in illustration in Iran. And when I was 30 years old in 2015, I decided to study painting. So I applied to some grad school programs in the US. Because for me, painting was my ambition. It was the ideal career to have, in which I didn't have to cater to any specific client, unlike graphic design or illustration. So I attended a one-year program at Brandeis University, and then I got into RISD MFA program, and that's how my life changed. And I met my now husband here in the US in Boston. He was a scholar at Brandeis, and he was studying at Harvard. So we eventually decided to get married, and that's how I stayed here. Somehow similar to Minoo's story.
Yeah, I didn't get to the sweet part. Right?
Yeah.
Well, he's here, so.
Yeah. So that's.
I'm glad that you mentioned that you are different generations, because that's important, that you were in Iran at different times. And you both mentioned that you were doing work in Iran before you left, and then you came to the States. So as a follow-up, can you say how things might have changed when you started doing your work in the United States?
Well, let's start with Arghavan.
Okay. So in Iran, I wasn't a fine artist. I was a graphic designer. So it was a narrower, for personal expression, visual expression, it was a narrower field. But I think when I was a children's book illustrator, it was this general censorship. There were these areas that I couldn't touch. For example, if I wanted to depict a character in the book, which is a small kid, like a little child, I had to make her to wear the hijab and all these things. So I imagine if I was a painter, then I didn't have the freedom to depict women in the clothings that I decide and feel honest to my own experience, like these that you can see in this room. So I think it would be different if I had started painting in Iran. So that was one thing that I think there is this this, like, there are these, like, boundaries that are dictated on artists, and artists are trying to be creative to circumvent those rules. So when I got here, I was very excited that I have the freedom to express myself. So, like, the 2 years that I was in grad school, I was very excited about this newfound freedom. So I had, like, figures that are depicted in, like women that are not covering themselves. But then I thought that, so that was, like, because I wanted to have that out of my system. I want to paint whatever that I have been restricted to paint. But then I realized that I'm not interested in, like, objectifying the female body. So later on, when I tried that, now, like, in the paintings, you don't see that much space for the male gaze, if you will. But that was helpful. So now I feel that I'm comfortable to explore in my imagination whatever I want to express, and there's no limit, to sum it up. And now I pass the microphone to you.
Thank you.
Getting the hang of it.
So when you born, I was 15. So I remember pre-revolution. So as a teenage, my whole world collapsed. Just witnessing what is happening in the country and how my older sister's life has changed and everybody else. And as I mentioned, very soon, one year after the revolution established, actually, the war between Iraq and Iran started, and it lasted for 8 years. So I lived through the war. All the 8 years, I lived in the city close to Iraq border, Kermanshah, my home city. And the city was bombed through the war. And including that, I was married to a veteran. So my art, my art career started way late because the war made me and my family move a lot. And it was just, the life was different. So I was drawing, but I really didn't, and I had a baby, so I was just not putting enough time and effort to art making. But so I started my career in my, like, when I turned 30, when the life led me, you know. So so I was very hardworking. I was fortunate to find amazing artists and mentors who haven't left the country yet. So I find my way to their studios, and I had different time working in their studios, and I get everything I needed from different masters, right? And then at some point, I was offering, like, solo exhibitions, but I still felt I was not there yet, until one of my teachers said, when you're making the art, whatever you're making, if it not makes you cry yourself, if it doesn't make your heart beat so crazy, that's not what you should do. And I said, well, I'm not there yet. So then I start thinking about, what is the most important thing in my life? Well, it was my husband. His situation. He lost his leg, and he had other wounds that I was with him through all his recovering and everything. So I was like, okay, that's the most important thing, but how can I approach that? It was like opening the Pandora box, because, as you said, they never talk about it. They never share what they have experienced. And because he was 10 years older than I, he was protecting me, not telling me what he's been through and what he was holding and carrying with himself. So I started, it took a couple of months for me to start being able to look at this object that I had in my home for decades, like as a household, looking at this prosthetic leg as my subject, right? But I did it, and it took a year for me, drawing and painting and repainting and making all my paintings black again, until some artist, telling me, no, you can't do this. You have to keep these paintings. But I never thought I'm going to show them to anybody. But I've been encouraged by other artists, and also at the time my ex, and I said, okay, so I painted and draw artificial body parts for 17 years, especially a prosthetic leg, because I was stubborn. The war was over, but I was raising my daughter, and my mother and I and everybody else in the family was taking care of him, right? So I was thinking, the war never ends for many people, for many families, and I don't let people forget this. So I kept painting this symbol, if I should say, symbol of what happens, and I want to take this moment to just say and share like all of you, my deepest sympathy and sorrow for people who are experiencing war at the moment, and in the world, right? So I know what it is like, and I don't want to forget it, and I never will. We will talk about more projects, but what you see in the permanent collection of the museum is two prosthetic hands that I turn, and in this project I call it the Peace March, because I created this community of veterans and veteran families, and we march for peace with this project. Inspired by true stories, I transfer used pre-owned artificial body parts to art objects and sculptures, and I use Iranian, Middle Eastern aesthetic and handicrafts to just refer to the origin of these stories, and I named the piece all of them after the women who share their stories about war. So all of them. This piece name is Sohaila, and she's a war survival. So that for 20 years, I was working on this project, this painting, and then in 2013, I started this sculpture series. And recently, I had my retrospective show at Hartford Art University, and I had the chance to work with students, staff, and many other people from Hartford. And we made a quilt from 21 of these paintings, original paintings. And through, with a collective performance, I had this morning ritual performance, and I burned the quilt. So 21 of my original painting of this prosthetic piece being burned as a symbol of sympathy with what people are experiencing globally, and creating this collective voice against war and violence. So I'm very proud and so blessed with having that opportunity.
Deep breath, everyone. Right?
Thank you.
So I'm going to come back to this theme, but I'm going to take a pause and ask you, you came to the United States, both of you, at different times. Is it possible, challenging, or impossible for you to return to Iran?
So nothing is impossible. I mean, I like recently a lot of Iranians in the diaspora, they feel intimidated to go back to Iran and be in trouble. so for me, I'm because I've been outspoken about the human rights issues in Iran and the women, what's happening to women through my works and my interviews and so on. I feel a little bit like I feel like if I go back to Iran, there is like a 1% chance to be persecuted or being like asked for like questions. So for me, yes, and I think it's not only me. There are a lot of Iranians in diaspora that feel that, especially like the current political climate in Iran and how everything is getting more and more radical since the new president took the power, and after the women life freedom movement. Yeah, things are a little bit harsher, and also especially for like dual citizens, because that's the whole other story. So I think that for now, like since the last time I visited Iran, it was in late 2016, and ever since I haven't been able to travel outside the US. But when I get the permission to travel, I think I still prefer not to, because of that like 1% chance that I would, like, my passport would get confiscated and I won't be able to travel out of the country. But for every person, the story is different. Like, I don't know about you.
Well, yeah, exactly. So first, it's interesting that we both moved to the United States in 2015, but in a different place. I mean, in a different place in our lives, right? And yes, Arghavan is right. There's always a chance of being caught, and especially because, like you, I also speak up, and I talk freely because I didn't have this in Iran. I never wrote a statement. In my website, I never interviewed or sold my work to museums because everything is governmental and they know how they can use you, they can use us, they can use our voices, for their own benefit. So especially because war is their most important propaganda. So I didn't want to do that. When I had the chance to speak up here and talk to my audience, like now, I felt for many years I've been dancing without music, and now I can hear the music, right? And I can have, conversations and dialogue face to face. So it's the most amazing kind of privilege for any artist, So there is a risk for anybody living outside the country because they are purposefully want to hurt us and want to make our lives difficult here. They want to cut us diaspora from inside because they know what we bring back, right? What is our goal. And I have an elderly mother and I have a family, so I go back. I go back every year, and I just close my eyes and jump from the fire. So I don't know. I'm not as famous as you, so they don't care about me. I don't have that much followers. So as far as you are not a public figure, and especially they mostly care about cinema because it has the biggest audience. But we all take risks in our lives for the better, right? So
Thank you. So now I will go back to the theme of trauma and expand out from there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, and you correct me if I'm coloring outside the lines, your work reflects personal trauma that you've experienced and a shared socio-political trauma. To whom are you trying to communicate when you make your art? And do you have an audience in mind when you're creating your work? Yeah, you go first.
So for me, the very first audience of my own work is myself, very selfishly, because for me, like the creative process, the painting process is it's like mediation. I feel calm, and it's for me, it's a way to cope with whatever trauma I face in my life, whether it's personal or more collective and social. But beyond that, like it's for me, it's interesting to share this trauma to other people who have gone through similar things, and to create a broader conversation. So a lot of like for me the painting and creative process is like for me it's like a reaction to my personal traumas on a very personal level that I don't share with any audience in the public, and also more importantly like the collective trauma that Iranian women are going through, that maybe you, like in the Western audience, could have a sense of it during last year's movements and protests in Iran. But I don't want it to be like to stop there. So anyone who is, any woman, or even not woman, anyone who is going through any unsettling moments in their lives, I want to connect with them through my work, and like create this space that they can share these experiences to each other. But for me, like the core audience are the women in Iran, inside Iran, who are experiencing this like cruel, like the suppressive situation that they are. But beyond that, I want to amplify their voices through a more global audience. Yeah.
Well, for me, when I started, as I mentioned before, it was about my husband at the time. I tried to put my feet in his shoes, and understand, or somehow ease out what he experienced with me, showing my sympathy and being there for him as part of my caregiving, right? But then I was thinking, as my daughter grew, I was thinking about my daughter, right? And then I was thinking, well, what about families? And then gradually, this single artificial leg, multiple, right? And then also uh, female body parts, legs, hands. They find their ways to my paintings. So, and then I ended up painted many of them in one single painting. So it was mostly about like veteran families, and whoever been involved with the war remnants and consequences. But during this experience, when I started my sculptural project, the Peace March, I explore the kind of like collective strengths and working together, teamwork, right? I I I think to this point, painting was very therapeutic to myself, right? But then after that, because my mom still was telling me, like after 70, said, why you don't paint something beautiful like your students. But I still was painting the thing, right? So after that, I felt like creating this community gradually, because I didn't have a social media, I didn't have any platform, so it was just the word of mouth, right? Please ask your friends, can they ask their friends, find any women who would will to share their stories, because culturally we all are taught to hold in and not speak about our pain, especially, right? And it's really hard for women to share their pain. with someone who's not family or best friends, right? Close friends. But I find them, and then I realized all of us, and I asked them, each of them, to spend time with me during this transition of the particular piece, right? Most of them never made art, never been in this like place, but some of them learned some to do something, and some just, we had Turkish coffee, we chit chat, we listened to beautiful music, and that was it, because for me it was like creating this sisterhood, creating this bond, right? And then now I know after a couple of years that the whole thing was really therapeutic for all of us. And then after that, now I perform for my own videos because I grew up with body shame like most of other women in many cultures, not only Muslims or Iranian. So fighting that, breaking this burden and all of that, I started, again, I think that's also helped me to somehow, I don't know, rise. So, yeah.
Again, I'm just going to say one pause, right? Do you feel that need to just have a second to sit with what you're hearing? Or is it only me? Okay. And maybe you both need a moment to sit with what you're giving.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I always need that.
Okay. So you may have addressed this a little bit, and if you want to, so Arghavan, for example, you could speak to something specifically here. And Minoo, I think you've done this a little bit. But what do you want audiences to learn from your work?
Me first again.
Okay.
Okay.
I think there was a strategy to putting you in the middle there. Yeah.
So to be honest, I do not like to dictate the audience what to take from my work. And I think like art is something that offers like a very expanded area for the audience to take, and depending on the different people coming from different backgrounds, they can have their own take. So I have like these symbols or visual codes embedded in each painting, which are very personal, are coming through very specific personal experiences and life memories. But I don't want like the interpretation to stop there. I prefer if like audience coming from all different kinds of backgrounds, they're standing in front of a painting, they can have their own take based on what they have gone through, and it can be different, but it's still, I think, within the same range. And I think that's the amazing thing about art, that it offers a space for everyone to feel comfortable and to feel validated about what they have gone through. So it's not something narrow and something that I want to dictate to the audience. And I think for that, like the symbolic approach really helps. And also it doesn't limit the experience looking at the paintings to a very specific geography or time. I hope that it can transcend beyond any specific geography and any specific history. So that's my intention, and I hope I achieve that. I don't say that I do, but I hope.
Yeah, I love your work. How you challenge your audience, Well, there's no expectations, of course, but my hope is to engage audience with the work, right? And raise questions. I mean, when we watch a movie or read a book or poetry, it doesn't mean that we possibly don't understand it. It's just the magic of art is beyond that. So it's magical. It means that it gets you, right? We all have images in our mind that we crossed, right? and we didn't understand, but they stayed with us. And I have them, after decades. So I hope that my work is interesting enough or magical enough that the audience engage and they spend time with it, and they have questions and they want to know more. And the goal for me is this: to have conversations, to exchange. That's my goal. That's one of the reasons that I stayed here. So thank you again.
There's this famous saying that art is about raising questions, not giving answers. To add to what you said, yeah.
Yeah, I think we have some artists in the room as well. Does that resonate with you? Okay. And now I'm going to pick up, and we're going to let Minoo go first this time.
Oh my God.
Because you mentioned hope, and I want to shift to hope. What gives you hope? And because I want to then move forward in time, but what gives you hope, and how do you make space for hope in your work? And perhaps also acknowledging the courage and the bravery of women, right? And I'll set that up, and you first this time.
Do you have more questions after this?
Just to know.
Just be prepared.
No, you're good.
No.
We're going to go forward, and then we're going to pass it to the audience.
Okay, awesome. So, well, I think none of us can live without hope, right? But I was at the point in my life that I lost it. But I'm so happy that I'm in the place that I'm very hopeful about the future, especially after this new movement, Women, Life, Freedom in Iran started 2 summers before. When I was there, I was visiting, and I cannot put it in the words how I felt when I visited again last summer. And in the first day of my visit in Tehran, I walked to the nearest bazaar to my mom's, and I saw many women not wearing the mandatory hijab. So that was the victory I felt to my bones, after 45 years of uprising and fighting back the regime. So I'm very hopeful, of course. It's not going to be easy. It hasn't been. The price is so high. I talked to many Iranian women in summer because of a project that I'm doing. And one of them said, every day, every morning, for going to my work, I have to make the decision, am I going to wear this or not on the street? And I feel like every day I walk in a landmine, because I know you never know what is going to happen in your next turn, next block, next street. You never know. So I bow to these women, and I am working on projects, and my goal is to because I have this opportunity to bring the message, to bring the picture, the voice to my audience here, and just using I photograph them on the streets, and I'm working on a new postural project that using different resources. I love metaphor. I love symbolism. I love Persian illustrations. And so I'm putting together these new projects as part of a body of work titled Tehran Renaissance, resonating with Harlem Renaissance. That I actually, because I'm researching Harlem Renaissance, I want to read a sentence from a recent publication by Yale University, written by Denise Murrell. She wrote in Harlem Renaissance and Transatlantic Modernism book, Harlem Renaissance refers less to a place and time than to a transnational spirit of creative camaraderie. So that's what we do. Artists like us, are the Iranian artists in diaspora. This is what we do, and I'm so happy and excited about my new project.
So there is a question there. There's a journey we're on. So
Okay.
we'll come
Yeah,
back.
yeah. For me, it's similar. I think we as human beings, we are destined to be hopeful. So even visually, when I'm working on a painting, like the color palette I choose, or like the general atmosphere or feeling that you get from each painting, I don't want it to be too dark, because it's life. There is this balance between darkness and lightness. Like the disturbing moments in your life and the hopeful moments that you see there is light at the end of the tunnel. So for me it's similar. And like what Minoo said, after what happened in Iran, the protests that were led by women, and the whole starting point for all the movement was something around the women rights issue. I was very, very inspired by the bravery of those women. So I started working on a series that, like, you cannot see in any of these paintings because these were made prior to that. Like, women are wearing war clothes. They are depicted in very determined, powerful situations. That is like an homage to the resistance that Iranian women on a daily basis, as you said, not not wearing the compulsory hijab they're showing. So for me, it was very inspiring and very empowering. And this is something ongoing in my studio. And every day when I look at images and videos coming outside Iran, I'm in awe of these like braveries, because any of the Iranian women who do not wear the compulsory hijab in public, they're risking their freedom and even their life. So it's huge, and that's like the point of hope for anyone looking at the situation. That I would like to end on that note.
So this is great because we are in sync and our time is going well. So you will get a chance for questions, but I'm going to leave you a little more space to talk about your future work. I want to leave an explanation in more detail about the new movement and the anthem. We're going to close there before we pass it to the audience. But I want to ask you, given, and you've addressed it a little bit, but expand on it if you'd like, about how what's happened now and how that's informing where you're going. Talk about the future. So it's how you've been inspired by the bravery of women, how hope finds its way into your work, and how you're moving forward. Both of you, and then we'll have a moment to help you understand the movement and the anthem.
Okay, I go first. To be fair. So
But whenever you go first, there's not much left for me to say. Because eloquently you cover everything.
okay, you go.
That's easier for me. No.
Let's do Taro.
No,
Please.
I'm.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Well, this time is different because we are doing different projects, but of course, inspiring, but with what is happening in Iran, and be deeply connected. Because yes, we moved out of the country, but it doesn't mean that we left. You know. So this body of work that I'm doing. As you mentioned, I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So I work with different materials, different tools. I created a series of glass sculptures last summer, and they are famous as tear catchers. So from Qajar period dynasty, like from 300 more years before, they are famous for women collecting their tears in these vessels when their husbands are far in battles. And at the time, it was like months and years of them disappearing. So, but, well, who knows? That was also a love measure, right? When it gets there, I mean, we can cheat, like we can put water in it, right? But anyway, so I made these vessels because they are conceptually very close to female body. So they've been created and designed for my ancestors because of for women, and it's a very interesting shape. It has a body, but then it comes kind of like to the neck, and it's very like this area, and also the mouth shape. So I felt like these objects, when I saw them in a glass museum in Tehran, I felt that these are speaking to me, that they have a voice. So immediately the voice joined in my head with the vessels. So I made these vessels, and I inspired by all these terrible images that I've been, like you, Arghavan, that I've been look at every day, from wounds and shots that women and young men and everybody in Iran been harmed by the morality police during the past year, more than a year. So I wanted to make these marks to these glass pieces. I did many different experiences, but what I end up with, mixing metal mesh with glass clay, and this creates some bubbles and some imperfection in the body of the glass. So that did the job for me. And also I carved some of them, like literally there are big black vessels. So I learned how to carve them and create these cuts. And that's why I talk to many women. I recorded their voices. I asked them to talk with their power voice. Tell me the stories that they are proud with, the highest experiences as a woman that they have in their lives. So from different generations, and I kind of mix them, and also mix them with young singers in Iran, women singers, because solo voices, solo singing for women are forbidden in Iran. So they have to sing in chorals or have men kind of simultaneously sing with them. So these girls, as part of their activism, they fight, right? They record themselves singing and dancing and publish it on social media, right? So this is, again, part of the collective resistance, part of collective fight with this terror, with this totalitarian system. So I'll also add these voices and create this kind of sound, design this and create this sound piece that goes with the sculptures. So the sculptures are all together, and I use this, we call it umbrella speakers, because you can hear the voice only when you're very close. And if you step like 3 steps back, you don't hear anything. So when you get close to the glasses, you can hear this sound. These layers of singing and shouting and screaming on the street, because it's all power voices, female power voices that I had access to. So that is also part of my Harlem Renaissance, because as you know better than I, when Black American fellows, they moved to New York, to Harlem, to create this neighborhood, this unify together, right, and fight against odds. This is what Iranian women do for decades, and especially now. That's another way that I feel connected, right? Suppressed groups, right? And then with these paintings, like the 2D works that I'm doing, again, I use ordinary people, ordinary women's portraits, like the American artist, what was his name? I don't want to. Kenneth Wiley. So he's brilliant because he's using these ordinary people, street people, right? And he put them in this magnificent setting.
Hindi Wiley, you mean?
Yes, Kenneth Wiley. Yes. So I'm doing the same similar thing with Iranian women portraits on the streets, So hopefully someday I'm going to show in, and you all are invited.
Arghavan?
Um,
So
there,
it's looking forward and how that
yeah.
may have been informed by.
On a daily basis, I'm still very too close. I'm very inspired by what's going on in Iran. So that's for me like the field in my studio to react to what's going on and paint. And a part of it is reflecting on my own experiences. But at the same time, I am on this like fine line that I think I don't know how to put it in words, but I want to stay honest to myself. And sometimes I feel I've been out of Iran for some years now, and I haven't gone through all the horrible things that over the past few years Iranian women are going, and I don't want to exploit that pain through my work. So this is a very fine, delicate line, but at the same time, I want to amplify that voice. So for me, it's a very personal struggle. But at the end of the day, I know that I'm staying honest to myself, and it's a story that needs to be shared with a broader audience. So one of the things that in my recent projects I'm focusing on is the image of hair, because like the movements and what Minoo said, that how Iranian women are resisting to the totalitarian regime by not covering their hair. So hair has become like a political subject. It's beyond what it used to be. So I have these like images of hair, or incorporating natural, real human hair in my paintings as an homage to the movement in Iran. Yeah, I prefer to keep it short and leave the images to speak for themselves. And you are all invited to to whenever the project is exhibited.
We should have a show together.
That would be an honor.
So what I'd like to do before I turn it over to your questions is I know some of you, maybe all of you, know about the movement that we've been referencing, the Women Life Freedom Movement. And there is an anthem associated with it. We have the words in English, and I don't think we have, yeah, we're going to share them with you. And which one of you would like to explain the anthem? Minoo? Okay. And then after you'll have the words, Minoo's going to explain it, and then we're going to play it for you, and then we'll transition into, the mic goes from me out to you.
So when this movement started, it started before a young Kurdish woman has been hurt and died in the police morality police custody. So when she died, in her funeral in Kurdistan, you may know where is Kurdistan. Kurdistan is a tribe in the west part of the country, close to Iraq border, when I am from. So in her funeral, many Kurd people, they traveled to her home city, town, and in her funeral, women took their hijab off, all of them. So that was shared through social. Oh, should I start over? Oh, sorry for that. From the beginning? Oh, okay. So, because simultaneously all these images being shared in social media to the whole nation, that encouraged women to take their hijab off and join the Kurdish people and kind of like rise for her, not only Gina, Masa Amini, but also for other young people who've been to the government in prison or in government custody. So it started there, and very soon, because it was there always. Very soon, it was a national uprising in every cities. Women took their hijabs, they march on the street. They even single young women. We have images of them taking their scarf off. They are walking like on the line between lanes on the street and shaking, like moving their scarf up on the air. Many terrible images of how fundamentals and hardliners reacted to those, but nothing stopped these girls. Simultaneously, Sherlin Hajipour is a musician, so he collected words and phrases from people tweets, Iranian people tweets. Everything from like how they feel about the environment, what they feel, their hopes,
Like all the reasons they
fears.
took to the streets.
Yes, all the reason they been on the streets and asking or fighting for. So he collected these phrases and put those together as the lyrics of this song. So the lyrics is written by people and not only one person, right? So and then he put the music, and when he sang this, I mean, it was like a rocket high, like popular song. And actually we all voted for the Grammy audience favorite one, and he won. Actually, his song won. So I would love to ask you all, please, if you had the time, search for it. It's everywhere. You can find it in YouTube. We're gonna play.
Yeah.
The Farsi version or English one? There is an English one also. So yes, please.
And I wanted to say, just to add what you were saying, that the act of taking off the hijab and being public and flaunting the fact, but on top of that, to be sharing these images on social media and to be putting your words out on social media, like the bravery, like the level of risk and determination and bravery of these.
It's I thought about it like equal to what Rosa Parks did, like acts of
Civil
civil
disobedience.
disobedience. Yes, yeah.
No, I
Honor.
will not give up my seat, and no, I will not wear this hijab. Right? And really not going to wear it. Right? So yes, I think, right, we have it both in Farsi, but the words in English. Yeah. All right. Are y'all ready? Yeah. All right.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه، برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای قرصای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی.
Right. So this is the point where I hand the microphone over to the audience for your questions. But in advance of that, could we just acknowledge these two brave and beautiful women artists?
You're not in the shot.
I'm not in the shot.
Get in there.
You're quick.
Are there any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting this on and sharing your, very sort of deep and probably difficult feelings and thoughts about the country that you were born in and had to leave. And I just want to also mention that song, the singer, he did go to prison when he sang that song. And everything was blacked out, so you actually couldn't find it for a period of months. Luckily, he was freed, but and that has to do with the laws of Iran, which are so corrupt. And there's no due process, and there's no safety for men, women, children, anybody. Visitors, nobody's safe. So you mentioned that you would do your art in a studio, and was that legal for you to do that, or were you sort of needing to protect the fact that you were doing that?
In Iran, which period?
Right after the revolution.
Oh, well, right after the revolution, I was busy with life, because I was busy with life, right? So because of the war and everything else. When I started seriously making art, we've been settled, and it was 10 years after the revolution. And at the time, I didn't have a studio. For a while, I had just a little desk in the corner of room. I never thought I will need a studio. And after that, I worked in many different places, in basements, friends' basements, attics, everywhere. But then when I had a chance to have a studio, I had a home studio. I had a studio and home in the same building and same street. But mostly when I started teaching, I had a home studio. Actually, I was living in my studio. I was not working in my home. So I was living in my studio. And for 17 years, and I was so lucky. I had a library. I collected all the banded books, all the not ever published books, like 5. I got everything from black market, all the magazines, all the films, and we had the chance to watch them and talk them, and we all grew up together. With all these women that I'm still in touch, it's one of my communities that I'm proud of, and I meet with whenever I go back and I visit. And if not, we meet online and all of that. I still am mentoring some of the young artists that I started work at that time. I I kept it private because I had my friends, female artist friends, that they got the license of having like um, teaching studios. Uh, but I didn't want to do that because they could knock at any time, even when you didn't have the class, knock on your door, come in and search and detect your life, even your closets and your bedrooms, and if you had anything like not approval by them, like then you would be in trouble. And all my life was forbidden, and not what they wanted. So I never won that permission. I lived. We all had like underground life. We had double lives. Many exhibitions underground, many performances. I would highly recommend you all read Pamela book, Iran Alternative, The Landscape of Contemporary Art. It's Pamela Karimi's book. So I would highly recommend that. You will know how you have this double life and how you grow in the underground to resist in the upground, on-ground one. Yeah.
And I want to add to that like Iranian artists are more stubborn than what the government expects. So they do not express themselves within the boundaries that the government dictates on them. And one of the most like visible outcomes of what happened over the last 2 years is the Iranian cinema, and how the Iranian filmmakers are refusing to show compulsory hijab in their movies, and they pay a heavy price for that. Their movies get banned from being screened in the country, or like the female actors, they get banned from like working in future films. So I mean, the government wishes to dictate these rules, but artists, they don't find themselves confined within that boundaries.
Hi, my question for you is, we've talked about women and the impact on women. What about the average man? And is there a lot of support for you behind the scenes from the average men who are not part of the far extreme?
That's very. I'm glad you pointed it out, because I am talking about Iranian women because I'm talking about my own life experiences. So, like the situation, the human rights situation in Iran in general is in a very horrible situation. Like freedom of expression and like a lot of social freedoms. So it's equal for women and men in general. And the movement, there were a lot of men that were killed during the protests, or later got executed because they participated in the protests. So like for me, for example, whenever I talk about my work, it's more about women because the situation is harsher for women, but it doesn't mean that men are living a very free life. And because I'm talking about my own experience, so it's through a lens of a woman going through that. But for sure, I think women couldn't raise their voice if men were not accompanying them and they were not supporting them. Like maybe you can remember it clearly, because one of the first protests after the revolution, maybe in 1980s, were women that were reacting and protesting about the compulsory hijab rules that they were trying to establish it in Iran at that point. At that point, men and a lot of other women were not very sympathetic about the movement. So it got silenced, and they said that we have more important things on our agenda than what women should wear. But now, because there is this like collective support and men are supporting women about having their choice about their own body and their body autonomy, that I think that's one of the points that this protest and this movement became nationwide and found a voice. So I think, yes, this is like something that like both men and women are going through. And I think it's not fair to men if we want to just limit it to like limit the experience to something only about women in Iran.
Yes. To add to what Arghavan said, when I learned about guerrilla art and feminist movements, I should say that we didn't have a female artist name in our book history resources in Iran before internet, right? So having that heavy censorship, I feel bad to say, well, we learned a lot way late, but just working with our intuition and resonating with what we have experienced as individuals or based on our family, we learned, and now we know that personal is political, and it's a collective experience in any the totalitarian system through the history. If we think about how people survived, right? It's a collective. It's we all been there together, right? So yes, it's. It always, you might not remember, you were younger than I, but I remember what happened in the first decade after the revolution, how they put pressure mentally and physically, how the terrorism like rised and they could push people to leave the country or imprison them or many of them, if you look it up, in the internet, thousands of them have been executed in the first decade during the wartime. So yes, it's a collective experience and resilience and uprising, and we have hope and we know it will end.
And if I want to add something, unfortunately, this is not it's something universal. Like if you, like you said, like women artists, we didn't know of them and etc. If you think about like Renaissance art, how many Renaissance female artists you can recall? So it's like as if it was like the norm in history, like patriarchy was the norm and women had to fight back to find their voice. Like it's only more over 100 years that here women can vote. So as if it was like for the civil, like ancient civilizations, that was the default, that women are second-class citizens. In some countries, women had started the fight sooner, and in some other countries, they are catching up. So unfortunately, it's a universal issue, and it's a very long road ahead of us to get there.
If I may, I should like to just looking at your beautiful works here and thinking about my work and many other Iranian female artists. I think what we do based on our personal history and personal experiences, we also are fighting the colonial standardization of women, Muslim women, or women from the Middle East, right? So we are destructing, we recreating the self-image, right, with the new standards, with the power and the beauty and power and agency that we all know, and we want to present it, right?
No, very well said. Yeah, trying to defy the stereotypical image that the Western audience expects of a female woman, like a female artist from Middle East, for example.
First, I want to thank all of you. I couldn't hear a thing, but I'm rock and roll stone deaf, I guess. But I've been in this room now dozens of times for music, for lectures, to look at art, to paint, to glue. Gluing, the night of gluing was the best night. And I'm fascinated by your art. Every time I come, I see something different. So let me ask the question, and I'm not going to embarrass you. But I understand the 2,500 year or so continuum of Greco-Roman art that's gone through Iran, Marco Polo and the Silk Road, the Tigris, the Euphrates. The paintings with the red strings. Is the red string a rope or is it a transfusion, blood transfusion line?
So, like, these are like the red string is something that in my previous body of work, that some of the examples you can see here, for me, it was more like a visual metaphor, because I started my conversation here about how my work is influenced by my memories from Iran. And when I wanted to find one single image or object that depicts the situation in Iran, where these red lines, like these are the red lines that are dictated on us by the government that we mustn't overpass. So I thought that I can literally have these red lines in my work, and but not in a very radical way or very violent way. So there is this room that like the ropes are not depicted as if they're like the characters in the paintings are harshly entangled in them, but it's more gentle, because I didn't want the paintings to be too violent or too much, and more subtle. So at the first encounter, the viewer, like the color and like these like subtle hints, they don't show themselves a lot. They don't impose themselves on the viewer. And little by little, when they see what's going on, they find some moments that are unsettling. So that was like the whole thinking process behind the depiction of red lines. I hope that answered your question.
I'm glad you asked the red string question, right? Anybody else have that question? Yeah.
I have a question from our online audience that I think actually sort of ties well with this. The question is how you, Arghavan, go about mapping out what's your process? Do you have your imagery figured out? Is there it's so precise, is there any room for movement or chance do you make any decisions that you then go back on? And I'm paraphrasing because I lost the picture of it.
That's a very good question, and I've been asked this question before. So the way I work, like whenever I start to paint, everything is pre-planned and sketched out. Everything is thought before. But the sketching part is the part that I'm more spontaneous. I try out different ideas. When I want to start painting, I feel very comfortable and I enjoy the process more when I know what I want to paint. Specifically, for example, about the works that are on textile, if I decide to paint some area of the textile and cover it and leave some other parts exposed, I need to have a clear idea about that, because if after I painted something and I change my mind, there's no way to reveal the textile, for example. Or for example, about the shaped panels, I need to have a clear idea of within that shape what I want to paint. So my process is more like an additive process than, so if like I have a visual foundation for my painting, and up to 80% I stay loyal to that. But after that, like when the materiality of the paint and other materials I integrate in the artwork may suggest some minor additions or changes, but above that, most of the things are planned. And I should add that I started painting from the opposite point in the spectrum. So I had paintings that were very process driven and spontaneous, like pouring paint on canvas and things like that. And I didn't enjoy the process and not having control over what's going on the canvas. And I realized that what I want to express in my paintings, like abstraction, is not a good vehicle. It's not enough. So then later I figured out over the years that what creative process and visual storytelling fits the best for what I have in mind, which eventually I came up with what you see in this room.
Did you have a question?
Throw your hands up.
So,
I'll throw my hand
so,
up, and I think I can talk loud enough.
so thank you. One, you said that one of your purposes in creating art was to evoke questions and conversation. So I was here with some friends on Saturday, and we spent about an hour and a half in here just going through each painting and talking about it. But one of the things that we were curious about, particularly with like a lot of like the trees and the flowers in different paintings, so are those like traditional Persian images, motifs from either blankets or paintings or temples? We were just like really curious about that. And when you said that you sketch it out first, you sketch it pencil, charcoal. So we were also curious about that.
That's a very interesting question. So a lot of my paintings are inspired by Persian miniature paintings, and there are several aspects in those paintings that, for me, it's very inspiring. One of them is like the landscapes and these like garden-like spaces that are depicted in those paintings, and I'm thinking of these like paradisical gardens in my work as a metaphor of that ideal space that I'm craving for. Because in a lot of religions and in literature, heaven or any utopia is depicted as a garden. So for me, that's like a visual metaphor of that ideal space, because I have a lot of these like dark moments or unsettling moments, and I want to have some space on the contrast. So what's on the other side? What's on the other end of this spectrum? Yeah.
Apologies for misinterpreting the hand signals that were being made at me, but in my limited knowledge of Islamic art, I recall learning that human figures were typically not depicted, and both of you are working very explicitly with human figures. Would the art that you have on display here and that you are making cause you to be in danger in your country?
That notion about Islamic art is like about centuries ago. Like that, like you're right that there is this like prohibition of depicting a human body because it could be read as idolatry. But that's for like 100 years ago, not now. But still, like even in the Persian miniature paintings that I'm referencing, most of them are depicting not a religious text, but an epic text or something which is more about like the Persian culture, not the Islamic culture, because Islam went through a lot of countries and adapted whatever art and culture that country had. So there is like this line between Islamic art and Persian art is blurred, because part of it was already there in Iran, and then Islam came, and that's this overlap. So I don't think that's an issue about contemporary time. But if you have anything to add.
Well, I would like to add that during the monarchy, Pahlavi monarchy, when I was born, the whole educational system was very Western. And even before that, since Safavid dynasty, Safavid and then Qajar and then Pahlavi, from there, like from 15th and 16th centuries, all the text that reviewed or been collected or written about Iranian or Persian art was through Orientalism, right? Oriental visitors, right? Like people who came from, scholars, writers came from France and other countries to Iran and then wrote memoirs, right? Like Madame La Fauvier, like some, so Madame La Fauvier. Since then, what we learn about ourselves are through Orientalism lens. What we taught, what they taught in art universities in Iran during this modern era, at Pahlavi's era, monarchy era, was all what they have been taught in Paris, Beaux-Arts in Paris, right? We had French and American artists came and teach in Iran. Actually, my older sister, she studied Western literature in American University in Tehran. So all the faculty and staff were American, right? So that was a different time. So my point is, since it's unfortunate because we didn't have the resource, we didn't have the people, and if we had, it didn't last to learn about what we had, so all the, for example, we learn, I give you one example that actually I'm researching now. We have a long history of narrative illustration, lithography in Iran, right? In Persia or Iran in different eras. This has been studied, researched, and documented and covered by Maslov, Ulrich Maslov, one of the East European at the time art scholars. Not this, he's alive, sorry. So we still are using his book to learn about the history of lithography of Iran or Persia, right? So this is one example. So we learn Western aesthetic first. And again, we had to re-educate ourselves to read about our heritage, right? So as Arghavan said, this was from the different era, but the era that we studied or grew up and the culture that we grew up, still, it was somehow that we learned the Western perspective first, and then we have to carve the stone and make it ours again. Sure.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much to Minoo and Arghavan and Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.